Welcome back into the Bettor Half Hour. Special treat for you on the mic with me, a New York sports lawyer, also co-hosts a sports law podcast, Dan Lust, in the building. Dan, great to be with you, my friend.
My pleasure, Alex.
All right, Dan, I want to get your perspective on what's going on with DeShaun Watson, headed to a grand jury on Friday. What does this mean for his case and his future career in the NFL?
Yeah, so at least as of today, right, we've gone 1 year since this case started, and that was a civil case back in March of 2021. So 1 year has gone by, Alex, without any sniff of criminal charges. On Friday, that decision will probably be made. It might go in a little bit into next week, but the grand jury is going to start to convene and make a determination here. So his case, the civil case, as people might know from the OJ saga, right, if there's a criminal case, that'll take precedence over a civil case. So to the extent that there are criminal charges, that'll stop the civil case in its tracks. And if there are not criminal charges, right, maybe that clears up his NFL future some, but the civil case will remain ongoing. You don't need criminal charges to have this civil case. So, that's really the procedural overview that we're dealing with.
And Dan, is there an outcome we can expect to see that the grand jury gives DeShaun that will make, from an NFL team perspective, them more comfortable with potentially talking to the Texans about trading for him?
You know what's funny? I've been watching the reports, as I'm sure everyone has. It seems like there's so much trade interest, be it the Carolina Panthers, the Pittsburgh Steelers, Seattle Seahawks, Tampa Bay Bucks, all these teams that need quarterbacks. But where was this interest at the trade deadline last year when there was no criminal charges looming? So at least to me, his situation is much more murkier today than it was when no team wanted to touch him at last year's trade deadline. Certainly, this provides some type of clarity. If the grand jury comes back and they issue a no bill, right, they say no criminal charges, that tells teams, right, that if they couldn't get an indictment at the grand jury, which, I guess it's a betting show, Alex, more often than not, if you go to the grand jury, there will be an indictment returned because it's a one-sided proceeding. The prosecutor gets to put on facts, and there's no defense side on the other sense to kind of counter it. It's not like My Cousin Vinny. It's not like A Few Good Men. No one is countering the prosecutor's arguments. That's why it's a one-sided proceeding. Us lawyers, we say that a grand jury could even indict a ham sandwich because it's so easy to do it. So, if he can avoid a grand jury indictment, I think teams will be lining up because that tells you that they couldn't even get a grand jury indictment there. There probably won't be one in the future. It's not a guarantee, but it's certainly more clarity than we have today.
And what would you say the possible outcomes are, Dan, from this grand jury for people out there curious?
Yeah, so this is the messy part that you're not going to hear on some other shows that just have kind of reporters on, right? These are potentially felony charges. It's not just one. It's not just two. There are 8 women being subpoenaed to the grand jury here. So worst case scenario for DeShaun Watson, there are 8 felonies that result from this. And a felony is defined by any sentence over 1 year in prison. A misdemeanor, right? 8 misdemeanors can result from this as well. That's punishable by up to 1 year in prison. And you have 8 of them, right? So you multiply that out. There were 22 women involved here. I guess the grand jury only wants to speak to 8. So that's why, at least, my legal mind here, I'm thinking that only 8 women are going to be tied to these charges. The other, 14, some of them didn't file criminal complaints. Some did. And I guess, the DA is saying that they don't want to proceed with those charges. So, 8 felonies, 8 misdemeanors, maybe some combinations of felonies and misdemeanors charged. And then, the other one, right, we have to acknowledge it. He could walk free and clear. But still then, Alex, the problem is Roger Goodell is waiting on the sidelines, right? He's waiting there to potentially issue a suspension. And that's what we saw from Ben Roethlisberger about 5-10 years ago. He avoided criminal charges. The DA's office came out and said no criminal charges for Ben Roethlisberger, another kind of messy sexual assault incident. And guess what? He got hit with a very lengthy suspension, right? It was about half the season. So, there might be some clarity, but Goodell's still waiting on the sidelines. Last we checked, Goodell was just waiting for some modicum of information to place him on the exempt list. And we haven't even spoken about an NFL suspension yet. That could certainly result as well.
Yeah, Dan, I have to ask, how likely is it for him to see the field next year, whether it's with the Texans or someone else based off this?
It's funny. I had assumed that he was going to be placed on the commissioner's exempt list. As we saw over in Major League Baseball, Trevor Bauer had his incident. He's placed on the baseball's administrative list, which is a fancy way to say paid leave. They pay him his full salary. He goes to sit at home. I thought they had enough here with Watson, right? It's another civil case, right? Pending investigation, give the guy his bag of money and let him sit at home. But Goodell didn't say that. Goodell said that he was eligible to play last season, but the Texans didn't play him, whether they weren't playing him because of the optics of having him play or because they didn't want to harm him and injure him as a potential trade asset. I'm not sure, but play. So I'd say he's got a decent chance to play in the NFL again. If there are no criminal charges here, yeah, I think that lane is clear, right? And all those people reporting, if it goes with the grand jury, there's trade interest. I think that's true, right? DeShaun Watson might be the most talented quarterback in the NFL that's on the trade market. And to the extent the criminal charges are cleared, guys have played with civil charges. Antonio Brown played for the Bucs with those messy, sexual assault charges back in the day. I don't think anything's stopping DeShaun Watson from doing it. Certainly not Roger Goodell.
Dan, thank you so much for the insight on all things DeShaun Watson. Make sure to check out Dan's podcast, Conduct Detrimental. We'll see you next time on the Bettor Half Hour.